Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Doris was annoyed with the session coming up, a lot of tales to turn in, no money to spare, not a penny, and this funeral. Her mother's neighbor, Aunt Wendy, had called and said that the funeral would be in a day. There would be round-trip tickets, and probably the cost of the arrangements too, if Paul or Ashley didn't take care of it. I wonder if they know yet? But to write to her brother or sister was not allowed by pride. Doris decided not to go, not to spend money, not to see her relatives with their sneers and complaints. She was studying anyway, so she had nothing to do there. She would come later to sit on the grave. There was no regret or longing in Doris, rather irritation with notes of sadness, of the habitual way of life that had receded. Her relationship with her mother, her older brother and sister, had been difficult all her life. Her mother molded her into a diligent girl, forbade her to go out and do what she liked, forced her to learn lessons, help around the house, iron her school uniform in the evening. The forbidden fruit only beckoned more. She spanked her stubborn daughter for her first cigarette, took away her phone when she saw Doris kissing a boy at the gate. Her brother called her the naughty one from kindergarten. Her sister rolled her eyes and clucked her tongue. Eventually, at 16, Doris, in another fight with her mother over a beau, snapped and left home. She lived with a guy, finished school, then left with him 500 kilometers away in a big city. She worked for a long time, survived the separation, but saved up for education, and only at the age of 23, she finally entered a university when she realized the value and necessity of a diploma and education. The girl did not maintain relations with any of her relatives. She had enough friends and colleagues. Rumors, of course, came, what and how, but Doris was not looking for them purposefully. Why? So they'd tell her, "Hey, you naughty girl." No. Doris was now unwilling to sacrifice even a fraction of what she had worked hard and longed to achieve. She was studying working, and it was unrealistic to find time for a trip. And she didn't want to be honest. They'll sort it out without me. The girl decided and pushed closer the synopsis. Ashley's mother had failed to mold a decent girl. Unlike her straightforward younger sister, she had a cunning, dodgy character, went head over heels, and wasn't afraid to use methods that seemed dirty to others. So, without much connection or higher education, Ashley became running a small travel firm by the time she was 28 in the capital. She had a short haircut and generally looked very apathetic, with tattoos all over her arms, brightly colored makeup, and expressively pelted-faced beauticians. The news of her mother's death had caught Ashley in another country when she had just checked into a hotel with a girlfriend. The trip was a 10-day trip. As a calculating and practical lady, Ashley had figured out how much an unplanned return flight and a missing trip would cost, not to mention a ruined vacation. The solution was obvious: stay and rest. Ashley could have gone to her parents' funeral if she'd wanted to. She was in a good financial position, but principle intervened. Management is not for women. Her mother grumbled. Our business to create coziness at home and hearth to keep. Let the men earn money. It is their natural destiny, and we have a different appointment. What's our purpose, Mom? We are not cogs in the engine. People choose who to be. Ashley argued. It won't do any good to go against nature. Mother was relentless. You've already gone and painted pictures, and it's time to think about family. Ashley, in her favorite manner, rolled her eyes and snorted. Our song is good. Start over, it's called. Talking about family, husband and children had triggered her gag reflex since she was in transition. Her mother's old believers pissed her off more than anything else. To inculcate not humility, submission, and norms of domostroi, ended up with the girl doing the opposite. Dress cut with scissors, changed into jeans and aggressive rocker outfits, instead of boiling soups, Ashley chose sketches of future tattoos. Instead of romances for the sake of bouquets and moonlighting, she sought out lucrative acquaintances. She knew she wanted to lead, to decide, and to get out of that box of traditional values her mother had stubbornly shoved her into. Of course, by the age of 28, the cherished dream came true. A chain of useful connections led her to the owner of a travel agency. Ashley promptly got a job there, then had an affair with a man and made it so that he formalized the business for her. Behind was a broken life of the ex-wife, a bunch of fired, unwanted female employees, and a pile of gossip. But the ambitious girl did not care. The winners are not judged, as they say. Ashley combined the leadership of the party and constant traveling. At home, even cacti could not survive, not to mention husbands, children, and dogs. Self-sufficient, selfish Ashley loved unrequitedly only herself and did not want to spray on anyone else. So she quickly got rid of her suitor by taking away his business, very cleanly from a legal point of view. In this succession, Ashley visited her mother once a year, or even less often. She was sick and bored in her parents' house. There was no one to lead. Paul himself could have a group of men at attention when his visits overlapped with Ashley's, and Doris ran off with her boyfriend. That left arguments with his mother, where there was nothing new year after year. To make matters worse, Claire began to drink and complain about her health. Ashley wanted to get out of her father's house as soon as possible to avoid crossing paths and listening to the old woman's complaints. Her brother will sort it out for himself. He's a man, and he's the eldest, decided the apathetic head of the travel agency about the news. She should have been there a long time ago. God forgive her. She thought a little later, but didn't say it out loud so her girlfriend wouldn't hear. If Claire tried to make real women out of her daughters, she tried to raise a real man in her son. But again, everything turned out to be a mess. Paul, from a small age, was forced almost everywhere to solve his problems by himself, to stand up for himself and not to roar. If Ashley and Doris' mother nagged standard feminine admonitions, then from her son required steadfastness, firmness of character, stubbornness, and determination. In the end, it paid off. Paul really was a leader in the class, the head of the class and the first in studies, but in the shadow of achievements hid callous heart, despotism, narcissism, and indifference to other people's problems. He could make caustic jokes about ugly classmates who secretly counted on his interested look, could shout at his sisters and his mother herself. Doris all childhood hid from her brother in corners. When he came home and in bad spirits, did not understand other people's tears because of a bad grade or worldly injustice. After school, the guy went into the army and decided to become a military man for good. For status and benefits, he married a shy girl from the backwoods, made a baby, and by the time he was 30, moved to the coast with his family. It remained only to guess what was going on at Paul's house, because his wife did not dare to say a word against him. Only a shadow in a dress looked out from behind her husband's back. The fool was clear that he walks from his wife and generally feels his full power and impunity. Paul came home mostly because of some paperwork issues. He knew that the mother began to be friends with the bottle, but limited himself to rare duty calls and sending money with the words, "Here, go to the doctor." Ashley considered a combative and almost fallen woman. Doris was an outright fool and a loser. He always held himself up as an example to them, without listening to any arguments. As a result, when all of them almost separated, Communication was reduced first to dry hello in the walls of the house, then to a short text message on holidays, and later and completely hushed. And everyone was fine with that. The neighbor's call happened at breakfast. Paul, with a stone face, listened to the news. He pondered what to do. The death of a relative is a valid reason, and from the service, of course, you can leave. But first of all, it was far away, flying by airplane. Secondly, he had long ago had nothing warm ties, neither with his sisters, nor with his mother herself. Only actual blood relations. He hadn't been to his homeland in 2 years, and hadn't bothered at all, and here was a funeral. Something akin to longing pricked Paul's heart, but quickly faded away. "Will you fly?" shyly asked his wife, serving coffee. "I'll send money for everything. They will organize themselves there." Repeated the man. "What about the inheritance?" Again asked his wife. Paul suddenly thought, "You're right, but we don't know if Mom left a will. And if not, then we will get the house for 3 by law. We don't have to break down either. These days, we can settle these things from a distance." Wendy stood by the fresh pit, holding the hand of a young girl. Besides them, there were about 10 other people at the funeral. Neighbors, friends, and former colleagues of the deceased. Paul, Doris, Ashley never arrived. Aunt Wendy blotted her eyes with a handkerchief and adjusted the black mourning bandage on her head. Oh, it's not Christian for the children not to say goodbye to their mother. We can't make them, can we? The girl sighed, clutching the carnations in her hands. "You're right, Lucy, you're right." Claire brought them up, put all her heart into it, and the children grew up so ungrateful. Wendy lamented, "Maybe at least they'll visit the grave, visit there." There were many kind words and tears about the modest wake, but more than one person asked Wendy and Lucy why none of the deceased children were there, and they didn't know what to say. After all, they had personally called all of them. Lucy knew, but she was too reverent about Claire when she was alive and too respectful of her memory after her death to explain to everyone who lived there exactly what was going on. "And what are you crying for, pray tell?" Seriously, Claire looked at her son's red face. The boy rubbed his eyes with his fist and pointed to the sandbox, where another boy, Eric, a juvenile bully, was having fun with his blue brand-new toy truck. "He hit you and you're crying. You have to be a man." Claire reprimanded her son. "Otherwise it will always be like this. You'll always be a crybaby." Paul stopped talking, sobbed, and looked at the offender. "Don't hit first, but if you get hit, hit back," his mom taught him. "And don't give your own back unless you're asked first, and say please." Paul sat down on the bench and pouted, his 6-year-old brain digesting his mother's words. Claire watched the child, but was in no hurry to return her son's toy herself. After a couple minutes, Paul got up, walked over to the sandbox. "Give me back my car, please," he asked the offender. Instead of answering, the bully threw sand at Paul. The boy at the same moment jumped on Eric and firmly nailed him on the back of the head with a plastic spatula. Soon a siren sounded again from the sandbox, but from a different source. A wrinkled Paul in dirty shorts proudly carried the blue truck home. That day he realized something, that better than the word please, brute force works. At the time, his father was still living with them and was also doing his part in raising their first child. He forbade imposing female duties and household chores on his son. He said that a man should learn to earn and fight, wash pots, iron laundry. He would have a wife. As a result, the boy did not know how to make a bed, fry eggs at the age of 9, but quickly realized his superiority over girls and with this position entered adulthood. Father was in an accident and died when Paul was 13 years old, Ashley 8, and little Doris just turned 2 years old. Claire was not so much saddened as exhaled. Edward was a quiet tyrant and demanded total obedience from the entire family. Claire wanted her son to respect women and be strong in spirit, but his father's bad influence had already taken root in the boy's subconscious. The sound of broken dishes in the sink jerked Claire out of her sleep after her night's work as a cook, and she heard the noise and swearing from the kitchen. "Clean up after yourself," shouted Ashley, pointing her finger at the dirty plate on the table. "That's your job." Paul shrugged and indifferently threw the dishes on the floor. "Stop it." Claire shouted at both of them. "Ashley, is it hard for you to clean up and help your brother?" "Mom, I'm not the maid to clean up after everyone." The scandalized 10-year-old put her fists to her sides. "He has exams coming up. He's studying. He's tired. What are you, like a little girl?" Claire begged. "I've got a test tomorrow, so let Doris clean up after us." Ashley said. Claire shook her head. She silently picked up a plate from the floor, took a second one from the table, cleaned it all up and turned around. Paul had removed himself from the kitchen with a triumphant expression. Ashley was breathing noisily, her nostrils flaring wide. "Daughter, your smarter should be softer, more flexible." She put a hand on Claire's shoulder. "I don't want to." Ashley objected. "I don't want to be like you." She stamped her feet and ran to her room. Struggling to provide for her children after her husband's death, Claire worked very hard, taking more shifts, going years without a vacation, and still had her own business and garden at home. No personal life, no hobbies, no hobbies. Claire lived for her children and the desire to give them the best education, summer camp, clothes, goodies, toys. She would buy something for herself when a previous item wore to holes or ripped. One day a woman was getting ready to go to a parent-teacher conference for her 11th grade son. Paul looked around at the mother. Stompy shoes, a stretchy skirt with an old oil stain, a linty blouse, and a late 90s fashion jacket. The guy wrinkled his nose. "Don't go, I'll say you were working." He stopped the woman who was about to leave. "Why, son?" Claire, perplexed, matured at the offspring. "They'll think we're begging," Paul replied briefly. "Don't embarrass me, Mom." The woman froze on the doorstep. She had barely gotten off work to hear about her son's progress from the teachers' mouths. Claire turned to the narrow mirror on the exit and glanced at her own reflection. In front of her stood a tired, unpleasant-looking lady with bags under her eyes. "Go get some rest." Paul took his mother by the elbow. "I'm not a bigot. I won't be scolded for sure, but you already know that." Claire returned to the room, and tears came to her eyes, and then sleep washed over the exhausted woman. When Paul left for the army, Ashley was 14 years old. She had hoped her daughters would be her helpmate, but the exact opposite had happened. Ashley's transitional age began to manifest itself early, but very clearly. It was immediately clear that the paternal genes had left their imprint here as well. The girl was hysterical on any occasion, closed the door, crooked her face at any attempts of her mother to impute some morality to her. But among her girlfriends and friends, Ashley enjoyed authority and had undeniable power, and she could expel or teach a lesson to those who did not please her. "You can't do that, daughter." Claire sighed as she listened to Ashley's boastful tales. "You'll make enemies." "I can," the girl replied. "You can't." "I can. Are you going to torture your husband like this?" "He'll run away in a week." The woman shook her head. "Who says I'm ever going to have one?" Ashley folded her arms across her chest. "What do you mean?" Claire splayed her hands. What about a family? Sooner or later you'll want warmth, comfort, babies to babysit. Ah? Gross. Ashley grinned. I've seen enough of you, thank you. I'm fine. There are more interesting things in life than cleaning a man and feeding a baby. The conversation was over. Claire had asked herself many times why the children had grown up the opposite way, not the way she had raised them. Instead of love and understanding and respect, selfishness and ego gurgled in everyone. Paul stayed to serve under contract and enrolled as a correspondence student at a university to qualify for an officer's rank in the future. He hardly ever called, and when he picked up the phone, he waved off that he had no time to talk. Ashley, by the end of high school, was more concerned with her own appearance than with grades and exam preparation. She moonlighted in different places to do tattoos and fashionable haircuts. The first Claire for a long time did not know about, the second accepted with a stretch, calming herself that the hair is not teeth, will grow back. And she saw the pictures on her daughter's body when it was already late. A piece of work popped out from under the sleeve of her t-shirt. What? Ashley asked snidely, watching her mother stare at her arm in horror. Do you want to see the whole thing? The girl took off part of the t-shirt. A grinning dragon in mottled colors and bright spots stared back at Claire. Why? Why, you tell me? The woman frustratedly sat down on a stool. I wanted it so badly. Ashley shrugged her shoulders. I like it. It's not right. Claire muttered. It's a lifelong stigma for a girl. You'll be seen as you know who. A decent guy doesn't need a coloring book. Mom! Ashley bellowed. I've argued this 1,000,000 times, and I'll argue it 1,000,000 times for the first time. It's in your childhood. Tattoos were only for convicts and girls of easy virtue. It's in your youth you had to go to school, get married, and have a baby. In your worldview, girls wear dresses and boys wear pants. I'm so sick of your lectures. She threw the dirty rag that was wiping the table against the wall and ran off to her room. And in the evening, Ashley ostentatiously dumped her shredded skirts and dresses on the carpet in front of her mother. Now you can't make me wear this if you want to. She kicked the pile of rags angrily with her feet. I've seen these traditional feminine values in the furnace. Claire was no longer arguing. Her daughter was tormenting her with her behavior. She drank like a glass of water to dry. She only hastily wiped away a tear when she saw in a pile of rags the blue dress she had bought her daughter for the prom. Occasionally Claire was visited by her neighbor Wendy, a vivacious grandmother who also raised 2 children on her own, tilled a vegetable garden every season, and kept poultry. Ashley treated Wendy's Aunt Ashley leniently. She could treat her to jam, not interrogate, not teach. Doris often played with the neighbor's grandchildren and also took her well. Claire, you're looking a little gaunt. It's time you quit this kitchen. Stirring her tea with a spoon in her mug, Aunt Wendy said, How can you quit? Claire waved it off. What are the helpers for? There are 2 growing up. Wendy nodded at the framed pictures of the girls on the wall. Claire twirled the mug in her hands and gazed at the floating teas. Wendy, I don't think my kids like me. She exhaled. What am I doing wrong? Yes, stop it. Aunt Wendy waved her hands. All kids love their parents and yours do. You do so much for them. That's what I mean, nodded Claire. Wendy took a candy from the vase and rustled the wrapper. A child's individuality should be embraced, his view of the world encouraged, guided just a little supported, she mumbled. But how to accept if they break their future life? Claire thumped her fist on the table so that she spilled the tea. But it's their life, and you can't protect them from all the mistakes. Wendy calmed her down helping to wipe up the puddle on the table. And the world changes and they change. You're teaching them to accept it, but what do? Claire suddenly froze. Her neighbor's words stabbed her in the soul, but it was impossible to admit it. The woman tried to be a caring mother with the attitude that she herself had seen in her childhood and that she thought was right. I have 2 boys. Wendy sat back down. So what do you think? They drank and smoked when they were young and went out and brought home D's. But now they are both handsome, both family men. They bring me grandchildren on weekends. Real men have grown up. The neighbor clapped her palm on the tablecloth. I scolded them, of course, in a good way, but the right to mistakes and bumps left. The woman continued, if you insulted your friends, you got a slap on the neck from them. If you tried vodka, let it be bad so that you get a kick out of it. That's how it is brought up. Only on their own skin they understand. I can't do that. Shook her head Claire, neighbor conciliatory, took her hand. Claire, even if you can't, the main thing is that you love them and want the best for them. They will grow up, then understand, and now let them sneer. Do not take to heart. Be above childish antics. They need to show themselves, to spread their peacock tails. Let them. Claire remembered her daughter's tattoo, her son's caprices and coldness, and could not understand how one could calmly react to such an attitude from close people. Although it was exactly that, insisted a kind-hearted neighbor. A paradox, no other way. Ashley went to the Capitol with some guy at 18, having drunk her mother's blood. She didn't want to study, but finished some courses in management and administration. Claire had talked to her daughter many times about the necessity of a normal education, but everything was as if she were talking to the wall. Ashley was of a different opinion and stubbornly continued to tear down the standardized female image. Doris was growing up too, and at first Claire had thought her a sweet and docile child. She wasn't soulless and narcissistic like her brother, nor was she selfish, dodgy like her sister, helping around the house, albeit grudgingly, cooking and cleaning. But from the age of 14, Doris' mind was exclusively on partying and boys. She often skipped school, ran on dates, hanging around with one suitor, then with another. Teachers called Claire with interrogations and requests to influence her daughter. To no avail. One day Doris long tolerated the moralizing mother and then gave out. I am young. I want to have fun, not over books mold sprouting. Claire gasped at this statement. If Paul and Ashley at least had goals and desires, even if not quite up to the gold standard, Doris was close to going down a crooked path. And so it happened. One day Claire found her daughter's pack of cigarettes in a hidden pocket of her jacket. Then she burst into her room and yanked Doris right out from under the covers, sleepy. Are you smoking? Shouted Claire at her. I don't need an ashtray at home. She grabbed the strap from her bag from the chair and slapped it on her defensive daughter's back. Claire had never had children, except for a little spanking when she was a kid, but here it was as if she had snapped, as if in that blow she had brought all her anger for the 3 of them down on one. Claire afterwards repeatedly blamed herself for the outburst, and the words "Sonny" came to her mind. Doris, the naughty skirt. Then Doris didn't talk to her for 4 days. She didn't stop smoking, but she hid it better, out of spite. And she stopped doing anything around the house, also out of spite. She had a boy who was a tomboy, an 11th grader and handsome, the kind of guy that drives girls under 20 crazy. Doris was no exception and went head over heels in love. Jack didn't do well in school, but he secretly drove her around in his dad's Ford at night. He taught her how to pour beer without foaming, and always told her about some murky business with the boys. Doris was impressed and dreamed of running away with her lover to the ends of the earth. That evening her mother caught them kissing under the cherry tree outside the house when she returned from work. Jack and his family, Claire knew perfectly well, sparse earnings wherever they could, a father who liked to lay by the collar, a mother who gossiped. Doris she pulled under her elbow, right out of her beau's embrace. "Mother, why do you always get on my nerves?" The daughter was furious. "You need to study, not with this tomboy cubble in the corners." Furious in response, Claire. "I'll take care of it myself. You haven't lived your life. Let others live theirs. You'll sort it out. You'll become a horse girl." Claire felt that her voice was breaking into a croak, and her face was burning with anger and helplessness. How could anyone accept such a thing? How could one accept knowingly ruining the life of one's own child? Claire didn't understand. Doris wanted to say something, but froze. The scandal ended when, the next evening, Claire did not find her daughter's things at home. She called her, wrote to her, asked her to come back, begged her to come to her senses, but Doris said briefly that she was now living on her own and did not need her mother, who considered her a wench. So the woman was left alone in the big house. And the other will say that live and be happy. The offspring got off her neck, but not Claire. No matter how the children treated her, it was harder to come to empty rooms. She called both Paul and Ashley, but they didn't like to talk for long, saying they were busy. They came rarely too, and not for long. Aunt Wendy came in frequently and somehow brightened the loneliness of her mother's abandonment. Claire even got a cat to keep her from being bored, but it could only listen and meow back. Soon the long hours on her feet and the age of 55 made themselves felt. On examination, the woman was told about a whole bunch of problems: varicose veins, cardiovascular disease, joints. Gradually, Claire herself did not notice how she began a friendship with the bottle to brighten the loneliness and drown out sad thoughts. Aunt Wendy entered Claire's house and found the mistress asleep in the kitchen at the table. The woman roused her. Lately, Wendy was very worried about the state of the neighbor. She became unsociable, constantly crying. Even the house began to fall into disrepair. Wendy tried to visit more often, but she couldn't stay away. She was in her 70s. "Claire, come up, it's morning." She shook the yawning and mumbling landlady, who jumped up, looking around and then shamefully hiding the wine bottle behind the table. "You've had enough of living alone," said Wendy, as Claire cleaned herself up and began to prepare breakfast. "Who needs me?" She waved me away. "Men look at young men, and I'm old." Wendy smiled, though she meant something else. "Men, it's a matter of time," said the neighbor. "And I think you need help and company." "My helpers are gone." Claire sighed, setting the cocoa down. "You're going off the beaten path again, aren't you?" Wendy scolded the woman. "I have an idea how to help you so you can have more fun without this happening." She kicked an empty bottle under the table. One of Wendy's sons often supplied orphanages with goods and other aid from concerned countrymen. Orphans on reaching adulthood were supposed to be given apartments under the state program, but in practice, some waited years for them, and some did not get them at all, and somewhere to live. "There's a girl named Lucy," Wendy told me. "Pretty girl, but she didn't get an apartment and had a baby at 19. Now she's scrounging around, can't live in a shelter, and you know how hard it is with kids to earn money for a rented place. It's a shame for the girl." "I still don't understand where you're going with this, neighbor." Claire listened attentively. "I'm saying that you should take her in and help her with the household, and she won't be bored, and you'll do a good deed. You won't work forever. You won't cook soup in this canteen, and I would have Lucy on old ties in a kindergarten as a nanny." Wendy finished. Claire frowned. She didn't like the prospect of letting a stranger with a child in the house. But on the other hand, Wendy was right. She was already going crazy with loneliness. It wouldn't get any worse. "Do you vouch for her?" Claire asked her neighbor. "If I didn't, I wouldn't even be having this conversation." Aunt Wendy nodded. "I've known Lucy for a long time, and I even wanted to adopt her, but they didn't approve of it. So let her help you and live with you," said Claire. Wendy looked carefully into her eyes, looked warm and understanding. "Claire, I take her away from you, but you need her more. I can see that." Ashley looked irritably at the mud on her new shoes, the dirt of her hometown, the dirt she'd fallen into when she'd gotten out of the cab. Home, sweet home. She muttered through gritted teeth. Ashley didn't intend to stay here long, and the next day she had a plane to the capital, so she stayed in a hotel. She was mentally preparing herself to meet her relatives, her older brother and younger sister. After all, Hi, I can't say the same about you. Paul looked at his sister with a glare. He didn't like her haircut, or the tattoos already on both arms, or the lemon-colored stiletto shoes, or the red pants peeking through the semi-transparent blouse. Ashley appreciated the look and rolled her eyes, but quickly regained her neutral expression. They exchanged short phrases about life, the weather and nature, and waited for the last person to arrive. Surprisingly, there was almost no longing or sadness in the words of these people, only a poorly concealed irritation at having to break the usual way of life. No one even thought of going to the cemetery to say goodbye to the deceased. She's a maverick in her repertoire. Paul grinned, lighting another cigarette. She was told to come by 12 o'clock, so it's already the beginning of the first, and she's not here. She's probably wondering where she woke up today. Ashley chimed in. Probably mocking her little sister was the only thing she and Paul had in common. Soon a cab pulled up in front of the office, and a disheveled Doris jumped out, her hair in a ponytail, her crumpled t-shirt poking out of her jeans. "I guess you were right." Whispered in Ashley's ear, Paul glanced disdainfully at his relative. "You're late." Without greeting or ceremony, Ashley confronted her younger sister. "I know." Doris snapped back. "It's not my fault the bus took so long." Ashley rolled her eyes again and brushed her bangs aside. "You'll make it up to me later." Sarcastically, Paul said, already yanking open the doors. "We have more important things to do right now." The notary, looking like a business canary, sat everyone down in their chairs. "First of all, I express my condolences for your loss. The loss of your mother is a great blow. We can go without ceremony." Paul cut him short. "We're busy people. We don't have much time." The notary nodded ceremoniously and asked for the testator's death certificate. Paul pulled the document out of his briefcase and handed it to him. The man ran his eyes over the papers, checked something, made a short note, and finally pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. He showed his signature and the date on it. Mom must have sensed that the document had been drawn up 6 months before she went to the next world. Ashley whispered, not addressing anyone in particular. "Why did she have the nerve to write that will?" Paul replied irritably. "Maybe someone gave her the idea?" Doris suggested, and instantly caught the frown of her relatives. Both of them did not like the idea, for the consequences could be bleak. The second envelope, too, was made out, according to all the rules, with the signatures of the 2 witnesses and the notary himself. In one of the signatures and curlicues, Ashley recognized the hand of her neighbor, Aunt Wendy. The envelope was opened, and at last the paper lay on the notary's desk. The deceased's will was written on an ordinary yellowed sheet of paper from an old notebook, which didn't fit the official office and the situation. While the notary was reading the text, Ashley was nervously tapping her fingernails on the phone screen, Doris was crumpling a candy wrapper in her hands, and Paul was crunching his knuckles. Everyone understood the importance of the moment and waited. I bequeath all my movable and immovable property. The notary raised his eyes at the audience, made an expressive pause. Lucy Clark. Silence hung such that it seemed to hear a fly crawling on the smelt of one of the folders on the far shelf. I take it there is no Lucy Clark here. The notary looked equally surprised at the young people that Ashley jumped up first from her chair. Who the hell is Lucy? What the hell kind of mess is going on here anyway? She rushed over to the table, wanting to see for herself if what she'd heard was wrong or a joke, but her mother's handwriting communicated exactly what had been heard. None of the names of the 3 children Claire had put in the will, and not individually. A complex signature at the bottom, with plenty of curlicues, testified to what was written. Ashley remembered from high school trying to copy it in her diary and failing miserably every time. We're not going to let it go, threatened the notary Paul, who also wanted a bigger piece of the inheritance. We bet we'll sue this Clark, whoever she is. Yeah, sue all you want. The notary shrugged indifferently. My business is done, and don't forget the copies. Under the puzzled, lost, somewhere angry looks of those present, he made 3 copies of the will, certified them, and handed them to everyone in turn. I'll get that Clark from under the ground. Ashley rumbled on the doorstep of the office, not at all embarrassed by the passers-by. It is for her and the house and father's garage and the land where he wanted to build a cottage. Doris curled her fingers in horror. Yes, her mother gave it all to her. Paul spat in the flower bed. I wish I knew for what merits. We'll sue. We'll get every last board in the house. Ashley's eyebrows shot up angrily, her eyes blazing with rage. We will, but don't expect us to share too much. Paul slowed her down. What do you mean? Ashley glared at him. I have a son growing up, and he needs a place to live too. Paul emphasized the word son. And I need to invest in my business. You'll earn your own money for an apartment. Ashley bit him back. Hey, I don't actually have an apartment. I live in a rented one. Doris shouted, listening to her brother and sister squabble. They were both staring at her with eyes that made it clear they were ready to get rid of the 3rd inheritance claimant right there. Doris clutched her head cowardly into her shoulders. The bickering under the door of the notary's office continued. Everyone realized that a quick resolution of the case, delayed for an incomprehensible period of time, and entailed costs and nerves. Meet Lucy, and this is her son. Wendy introduced Claire to the girl standing modestly on the doorstep. She had a 1-year-old baby in her arms and a small plaid bag, poor clothes, but a thick braid on her shoulder and huge blue eyes that still had a certain childlike naivety, a belief in miracles. Claire remembered how children had looked at her with the same eyes a long, long time ago. Lucy, you come in. Make yourself comfortable. Claire will show you around. Wendy pushed the undecided girl into the room. When the guest left, the neighbor asked, Claire, what are you doing out of touch? Good girl, have I ever deceived you? Good, Wendy, good. Claire dismissed it. But I'm not used to it, you know? You gotta look at her. Claire looked at her for a couple of weeks. At first, the conversations between the new acquaintances were awkward and clumsy. Wendy, as promised, got the girl a job in a kindergarten where she was happy to work. This way she could look after her baby and earn a little money. In the house, Lucy did not manage much, only asked short questions about cleaning and other household trifles. The baby didn't interfere with anything either, and was quite quiet. The awkwardness was gone thanks to his majesty of occasion. "Claire, I'm back," Lucy said loudly as she opened the door. The landlady's shoes were in their place, but she herself could not be heard. She cautiously entered the room, placed the cradle with her son on the armchair, and found Claire napping. There were a couple of empty wine bottles on the floor next to the sofa. Lucy rushed over to the woman and began to bring her to her senses. Claire opened her eyes and looked around awkwardly. She'd promised herself every day for the last 6 months that she wouldn't buy any more wine, that she wouldn't lock herself in her room and drink until the aching feeling of emptiness was filled. But when she'd come back from her shift, her feet had carried her to the store and her gut had demanded relaxation. Claire guessed that Wendy had insisted that Lucy move in because she knew about her neighbor's addiction and was worried. Also, everyone realized that Claire's children didn't care about her. They are busy with their lives, and at most they will put their mother in rehab for a long time. "Claire, what are you doing?" Lucy looked anxiously into the woman's eyes. "Your blood pressure, your heart isn't right, and you're drinking?" Claire was dumbfounded. The girl shamed her, but justifiably so. And then the unexpected happened. The accumulated tension, longing, sadness overflowed the cup and tears spilled out. Claire buried herself in Lucy's chest and burst into tears. The girl fell into a stupor for a couple of seconds, and then embraced the woman and began to caress her back and comfort her as if she were a small child. I always dreamed of having a big family, said the lady of the house, while Lucy was pouring tea. I wanted to be a mom, played mother's daughter all my childhood, read fairy tales about princesses. John sat in the stroller, staring at Lucy and Claire. He listened too, occasionally yelling and banging his fist on the side of the stroller. Mama wouldn't let her go out with the boys. She taught me to be meek, malleable, soft. She said that you should take care of yourself for your husband, and I looked at them with my father and thought that I would have the same, a warm family atmosphere, respect, hot dinner in the evenings at a big table. We had a small table, though, and the apartment was only 2 rooms. Claire sniffed her nose like a schoolgirl. Lucy put the cups on the table and sat down on a stool nearby, watching her son, who was beginning to fall asleep. I always thought the husband was the pillar, the wall, the main but wise one. That's how I lived until I met Edward. I fell madly in love, but I didn't see who. Claire continued. I got pregnant with Paul, we got married, and then Edward moved us here to this house, and I realized I was in a fairy tale. The woman grinned and sipped from her mug. Not the fairy tale I'd read, though. I thought I was a princess, but it turned out to be Cinderella. You would know how much I crawled here on my knees pregnant, scrubbing the floors, washing all the windows and mirrors every day. I cooked 3 meals with a belly button, first, second, and compote. Lucy listened without interrupting. Husband worked, received well. We had enough, but demanded perfect cleanliness and housekeeping, and I was happy to work like a horse on home bread. Loved strongly, caught rare moments of tenderness from him after reproaches for dirty table or unpalatable cutlets. I thought it was my own fault. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't see it through. Then my son was born, and I went into motherhood, began to raise myself a joy. Only bad things stick easier and faster, we all know. And instead of a good son, grew a copy of her husband, who thought that a woman only should. Oh, his poor wife now, or girl. How am I to blame for her? Claire sniffed her nose again and hastily pulled out her napkin. You had nothing to do with it. Lucy intervened gently. You did everything you could to make the child happy. Bad example and bad upbringing played a part. I would like to raise my son to be a noble, kind, and just man, like his grandfather, explained Claire with a sigh. What a shame he spent so little time with his grandson and left early. If only it had been different. If only it had been. My love and care and involvement was taken for granted by my husband and later by my son. This I realized many, many years later, and then I did not see my mistakes and made the same with my daughters. John dozed ludicrously in the stroller, arms outstretched. Claire stood up to cover the baby with a blanket. Lucy did not disturb her. When I got pregnant with Ashley, my husband demanded that I contribute to the family budget. I ran headlong to work wherever I could. We were a family. Although morally he ate me up every single day, and then I found out he was cheating. Cried to my mother looking for support. She said that everyone has so. Bear with it. The main thing, children. He'll take a walk and come back. That's how I learned that my own father was not such a noble man. Just my mother was wise and did everything to make me see the perfect picture. It was getting dark outside the window, and a fine October rain began to drip on the windows. The neighbor 2 houses away had a rooster crowing loudly for some reason. Lucy pulled the curtains and carefully carried the sleeping John into the room to put him to bed, promising she would be back soon. When the new neighbor tiptoed carefully into the kitchen, Claire was already making tea for the second time. And I did a new stupid thing, the landlady continued. I forgave him, just as my mother said, and that young knave, 26 years old was only. Husband realized that he has over me full power and can in any situation to remain unpunished. He tore through for every speck, for crumpled laundry, for the mess of children, and I obediently tolerated and only scolded myself that bad hostess, bad mother, bad as a woman, and then the 3rd pregnancy. I decided to leave, hoping for miracles once again, but no. In the upbringing of the girls, my husband was stricter, scolded for any disobedience, even the very tiny Doris, and for some reason I gave in. I clogged their heads with marriage, correctness, wise womanhood. Oh, if only I'd realized sooner, if only I'd realized. Claire raised her eyes to the ceiling and blinked often, stopping the tears from welling up on her lashes. And when my husband crashed with his mistress, as I found out later, it was as if the rope around my neck had loosened. I myself was surprised that I should be sad and cry, but no, though I had to work harder. I was glad, but so far only that no one else would come to my bed from under someone else's skirt. Quiet humiliation left and my eyes began to clear, but I still lived, indoctrinated by my mother. A woman needs a family, a loving husband his corner. I tried to instill this in my daughters, and now both of them see me as an enemy, and my son, in general, as a second-class man. Lucy moved closer, hugging Claire lightly, her shoulders shaking. I wanted so much to bring up sweet, affectionate girls, but I grew up with my lashings, Selfish and Walker. Do you know, Lucy, what is the saddest part of this story? She looked up at the girl. That I realized my mistakes only when they are all gone, and I am aging, lonely, and not needed by any of them. Claire, don't be so nervous. Lucy's calm strokes on my back were soothing. All people make mistakes, but there are no mistakes that can't be corrected. You did what you knew how to do. You loved and cared for them as best you could, and knew how. I'm sure it's worth talking to everyone, and everything can still be saved. Oh, my dear, you think I didn't try when consciousness overtook me. Claire sighed. I called, wrote, invited them to visit. They waved me off, said they were busy. The only thing I got was a couple of meetings with my grandson and money for medicine and doctors. I decided to go to them myself, but they stopped me. I endured, tried to understand, to justify them, but I knew I was fooling myself. I was burned by this feeling of helplessness in front of those I had created. So I broke down. Yes, I started drinking. It's the only way I can take away for a little while the pain of not being needed by my children. All your life you have given yourself and your joy to people around you, your husband, children, strangers, but have you ever been truly happy? Lucy asked cautiously. I don't remember. The woman was silent for a long time before answering. I was happy for my son's grades, for my husband's success, for the children eating well and not getting sick. That's not it, Lucy said. Although, as a mom, I understand you. I too rejoice when John eats and sleeps. It's good, but it's different. When you are happy for yourself internally, genuinely happy. This time Claire was silent for a long time, trying to search for such a long-forgotten feeling in her memory, and found it only in childhood, when her mother brought her a small kitten from work. Claire had played with it for a long time then, cherished and stroked the animal. I think I have long forgotten what it is. She answered quietly. Many people forget, but it is very important to keep the ability to be happy at any age. Lucy smiled. Let's learn it again, shall we? Let's. The woman smiled weakly in response too. Thank you. Surely the neighbor must know who this Lucy is. Ashley reasoned as she sat in the cab, once again cursing at the lack of asphalt and the dirtiness of her hometown. When the fervor for cursing at the notary's office wore off, the trio decided to go to Aunt Wendy's house. She had called with the sad news she also often visited her mother, and her signature was on the envelope with the will. But it was too late. Aunt Wendy had slammed the wicket door shut with an unprecedented swiftness for an old woman. There was a squeal from Doris, whose fingers were nailed, and immediately afterward, Paul's cursing. The company realized that no one else would talk to them here. Their mother's swinish attitude had played its part. Ashley and Paul took some documents and things from their once empty home, and then all three of them left for their respective cities without getting anything. Here you go. Lucy, smiling radiantly, handed Claire a cotton candy stick. For me. The woman was so confused that she stared at the treat, wary or uncomprehending. It was hot, a Saturday, and both of them had the day off. A small circus that had arrived was performing in the local park. Lucy, on the pretext of going for a walk with John, dragged Claire out to walk there. Let's go, let's go. She jokingly hurried the crumpled Claire, already on the doorstep. On the last warm days of October, it was simply a crime to stay home. The woman hesitated at first, then agreed. Claire caught herself thinking that it had been a long time since she had taken a walk like this. All her routes were calibrated for a specific purpose: work, home, store, hospital. She'd somehow forgotten that you could just wander aimlessly like that, for the pleasure of chatting with someone and not constantly looking at your watch. The park had already begun to put on its fall finery. The purple maples sprinkled on the sidewalk a carpet of patterned tree leaves. The soft branches were swaying, where the leaves were golden like a scattering of coins. Late blossoms bloomed in the beds. The sun glistened on their petals like a bead of night rain, and only the Christmas trees stood unperturbed and green among October's orange-red palette. Claire even admired the scenery, sighing at the still warm, but already drenched in fall dampness, air. She remembered long-forgotten feelings of calm, joy, silent, quiet delight, when vanity seemed to be wiped away like dirt from glass. Did you enjoy the performance? Lucy asked. Yes, I haven't been to a circus in probably 20 years, Claire admitted. I never thought you could go there just for fun, without an occasion or your kids. A lot of things are really fun to do for no reason. Supported her Lucy, fixing John's beanie. Who said you needed an occasion to be happy anyway? Claire looked at her, either with respect or with sudden insight. "You know, Lucy, you're not at all what I used to think you were," she confessed. The girl laughed. "Who did you expect?" "A wimp with a depressive temper." "Well, not exactly." Claire mewed awkwardly. The question confused her. Lucy wiped John's applesauce-smeared hands. They wanted to leave him there. But I didn't let them. I couldn't wait for an apartment, so I rented a room in a communal house on my cleaning lady's salary and child allowance. That's how I fully realized how important it is to be happy, that you just live and perhaps help others to live. And that's why you went to work with children. Claire suddenly guessed. Yes, Lucy nodded. Children still know how to enjoy the little things, while adults are drowning in routine. In some stereotypes, in fictitious frameworks we cage ourselves in, where there is nothing but vanity, problems, and fears. There are very few people who in adulthood can genuinely rejoice and see the beauty around them. She pushed back her braid and pointed with her hand to a woodpecker on the trunk of one of the maples. Claire also noticed the bird with the red barret, which was busily hopping along the bark. "You have welcomed me into your home, you have been kind, and I am eager to help you enjoy life again," Lucy said. "And you're starting to get good at it." Claire hugged the girl, hiding her wet eyes from her. It had been a month since that conversation in the kitchen that evening. Claire had forgotten the last time she'd had a drink, and her house felt cozy and light again, in a way it probably never had before. Maybe it was because both women needed that coziness, and both tried to keep it. Evenings were spent in conversation over fragrant tea or in walks. Lucy told Claire about everything, and the woman was amazed at how broad the girl's horizons were and how much she herself had missed in life. One day the company wandered into the evening park again, and some guy gave both of them a rose. Claire was so embarrassed she didn't know where to put the flower. She finally wanted to come home in the evenings, cook something delicious, hang out with John, listen to Lucy. It was amazing how dear this stranger by blood had become to her. Aunt Wendy sometimes came to visit and watched more and more as Claire survived, as the blush returned to her cheeks and the sense of purpose in her eyes. It was as if Claire had gained a daughter and a grandchild during this time, and no talk of rightness or marriage. How easy it was to accept a man with his special views, his cockroaches, and his experience, and even if Lucy cooked soup differently, cut bread thickly, and scrubbed floors the old-fashioned way, Claire no longer wanted to argue, to correct, to teach, and it was not indifferent resignation, but the very acceptance that she had always imposed on her daughters imposed what she herself did not understand. One day at lunchtime, two men knocked at the wicket of Claire's house, and the landlady came out, looking behind the wicket in surprise. Lucy was at that moment putting John down for his afternoon nap. "Hello, we're from the utility company. We're checking the wiring for connections past the meters." The men introduced themselves and shoved some form under Claire's nose, which she didn't have time to look at. "Everything is legal." She stretched out confused. "If it's legal, we'll check for frayed wires. What if you have a leaky roof?" The danger of a fire due to a short circuit is no joke. One of the guests raised a finger, very determinedly put his foot in the yard. All right, the woman stepped aside, allowing the workers to pass. The repairmen began to inspect the wires and their location, and then with serious faces looked at the pole, scratched the back of their heads, wrinkled, and as a result they said, "You have one wire here that is not connected to the meter, and the coating on it is frayed. We need to cut it off and look in the house to see if there are any signs of a short circuit, but I don't think I shorted anything. The TV works. The bulbs are intact." Claire shrugged. "Tell the firemen the same thing later." One of the men yanked her indifferently. The woman had no choice but to let the workers into the house, and they were very active, climbing along the outlets, picking at the lamps, looking into the panel, studying how the wires were laid. They didn't even take off their dirty shoes. Claire just sighed, propping her cheek with the palm of her hand in the hallway. 10 minutes later, one of the workers came to her again and with a sorrowful face said, "Mistress, there was a leak in the ceiling next to the switchboard and sockets without grounding. You need to repair or share a kranets 220 from the kettle or iron in the rain and all." He even made scary eyes for convincing. "So how is it? How many years have I lived and everything is quiet?" Claire just splashed her hands. "You live for so many years and tomorrow it will happen." Her interlocutor continued to frighten her. Suddenly his partner came out of the corridor, and Lucy came out with a telephone in one hand and a heavy glass carafe in the other. "We don't need to change anything," she said sternly, shaking the decanter. "We didn't call anyone. What are you doing, girl? We came to fix the problem." The fifth man, a man in blue overalls, waved his hands. "Troubleshooting that you just made up yourself. Get out, or I'm calling the police." Lucy showed the dialed number on the phone screen. The men squared their heads and looked at each other apprehensively. Claire was dumbfounded, but her hand instinctively found the heavy ladle on the table with which she had recently poured in the soup for lunch. "Claire, these so-called electricians came in with no tools, no paperwork, and a piece of paper from the internet. Call and have them picked up." After these words, the men rushed out of the house, so much so that they almost took out the door. Claire only had time to hear from the yard through the window, "Didn't you say this woman lives alone?" "Dear," when her pounding heart calmed down and her breathing became steady again, Claire was already sitting at the table, waiting for Lucy to put some valerian in her glass. "How did you realize that these crooks are not from the communal center?" she asked the girl. "I saw from the window and heard how you let them in, and immediately noticed that they came without tools. Electricians don't just walk around like that. And they won't come at all if you don't call them." Lucy watched the drops on the neck of the vial carefully, and then one of them dropped the paper they were shoving in your face, and then everything became clear. She set the glass down in front of Claire, pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. It was a crookedly scanned installation permit from a year ago. "Oh," sighed the woman, "what would I do without you?" "Obviously would have been left with no savings," Lucy answered bluntly. "But everything turned out well. But let's change the locks on the gate and the door, just in case." The women became almost kin to each other. Lucy made friends from the young staff of the kindergarten. She sometimes asked Claire to babysit her son while she herself took time out to go to the hairdresser's or to buy some little things. It was a joy for Claire to babysit John. She even thought of him as a grandchild. How different were these happy moments from the few miserable hours she was allowed to spend with her blood grandson. Paul and his wife were constantly criticizing her for everything and literally ripping the baby out of her hands. Things were different with John. He happily collected with Claire-colored pyramids of rings, threw cubes and balls, learned to walk, supported by a caring woman. Lucy would sometimes come and watch from around the corner, watching Claire's reverence for her son. Everyone understood it all, and everyone needed it. One evening, the girl came into the kitchen to take the baby from the mistress of the house and noticed a slight sadness on her face. "What's wrong, Claire?" Concerned, Lucy asked. "Oh, Lucy, my heart aches for my own children." Claire sighed. "I wish we could communicate with them like we do with you. About everything in the world, at least on the phone, but for 6 months they almost do not call and do not write. Doris ignores me completely." Lucy's having second thoughts. I think you can try to establish a relationship with your children, but you need patience. I've put up with an autocratic husband all my life, and I'm sure I have enough patience. Claire gave the girl a serious look. To pick up the phone and write to the children. These thoughts made the woman stupor and fear of a new refusal to contact her loved ones. So strange, she both wanted and feared it. The fear was vividly resurrected, memories of her youth of caprices and torment with the hard characters of her offspring. And then Claire pushed the heavy thoughts out with an effort and began to remember the fall walk in the park and after the circus show. She imagined walking like that with Ashley or Doris. Finally, having tuned in enough, Claire dialed her eldest daughter's cell phone. "Hello." Ashley's voice came through after a series of long beeps. "Hello, Ashley." Claire exhaled, gathering her strength. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine." "Why are you calling?" Her daughter's voice became suspicious. "Do you want money for the doctor or something?" "No, my daughter. I just want to talk to you." The woman took a sip. "Well, you talk. I'm listening." They agreed on the other end of the line. Something rustled in the phone. A knowledgeable person would have immediately realized that the call had been put on speakerphone. "Ashley, you and I have never picked each other up. Claire started it. It's probably my fault. I imposed something I was unhappy with without realizing it. Forgive me, please. But now I realize my mistake, and I want to know how you live. What you breathe. I want us to be able to talk like girlfriends, not hold grudges. Are you okay with that?" Some clicks, distant mumbling, rustling were heard in the phone. "What are you talking about? Are you talking to your girlfriends?" Ashley's voice came from far away. Was Aunt Wendy here? Then it became clear that the girl was dealing with some work issues on another phone. "Yes, chatting." Claire's lips quivered. "Bye, daughter." She pressed the cancel button and cried, covering her face. Lucy rushed to comfort the poor woman, but she sobbed like a wounded animal. "Oh, I'm an old fool to have hoped for a miracle." Claire scolded herself through her sobs. "Who needs me with my old morals?" "I do. Let's try again, shall we?" Claire looked at her dejectedly, smearing her tears. A little later. Lucy corrected herself, nodding cautiously. Frustration and sadness left Claire alone only towards evening. She realized that one attempt wasn't enough, that more would be needed, and already the first one had stabbed at her soul. It was even scary to call Paul. He was the most callous and cold-blooded of the three. The woman didn't even know what words to choose for such an important conversation with her son. Only Lucy's closeness, her support, sincerity, and participation gave Claire strength and determination. Paul picked up the phone immediately. Unlike Ashley, his clear, chiseled service hello rolled through the house, even from the tiny speaker. "Hello, son," Claire began. "I wanted to." "Mom, hurry up." Paul interrupted her irritably. "I've got things to do." "What's wrong?" Nothing. The woman lowered her eyes sadly. "I won't bother you then." "Yeah, go ahead. It came from the other end. We'll try again later. We can't give up." Lucy comfortingly took Claire's palm in her hands. The woman was no longer crying after the second call. Her eyes were filled with detachment. "Lucy, I don't think it's any use. They're adults, and they've been used to ignoring me for so long that it's too late to re-educate them. And your youngest, Doris? She's a little older than me," Lucy thought. "I don't know her contacts," Claire said, somehow embarrassed. "She blocked me everywhere after the fight. All I know is that she lives in the city and is studying, I think. Well, at least there should have been some channel of communication." Lucy wouldn't let it go. Suddenly, Claire jumped up and, muttering something, hurried into the room. She rummaged through the dresser for a long time, then pulled out a dusty diary. Among the recipe notes on proper cotton washing and phone numbers, the woman found her daughter's email addresses. She had once used that address in high school back in the day. Claire pointed to the corner of the page, and as I hadn't remembered before, that's better than nothing. Approved, Lucy. We'll think about what to write tonight, but in the meantime, how about some ice cream? Ice cream in December? Claire smiled. Why not? Lucy winked at her. Who said you can't? The mood would be instantly better. Just what the doctor ordered on such a gloomy day. Claire watched with her cheek pressed against her cheek, realizing that Lucy was trying her best to keep her spirits up, but her mother's heart would still ache. Even though she had become like her own daughter, she couldn't undo the mistakes of the past on her own. It's amazing how sometimes common troubles pull together and try on even sworn enemies. After returning to their respective towns, Ashley, Doris, and Paul started a general chat room where they discussed contesting the will. It took a couple weeks to figure out Lucy's identity and get the outside story. Albeit with a creak, the company agreed to split the inheritance exactly 3 ways. Nevertheless, Ashley pestered the lawyer with questions about how to legally get the most of it. The poor guy had already regretted that he had tangled with her and mentally cursed all the gods who had once invented the court and inheritance. That Lucy, the orphan with the litter. Ashley's voicemail message. Allegedly nursed her mother for the last year, but there's no paperwork to prove it, which means nothing to her or her offspring. That's interesting, Paul replied. Some left wench with a child, lived on everything ready for a year. Her mother wrote off everything for it. What a ride of unprecedented generosity. Can I also live like that and hop, in a year, another year with an apartment? Doris finished. Ashley clicked her pen irritably, pissed off by the situation. Peace, calmness, measuredness of stable income, partying and recreation shook because of this idiotic will. Now by the efforts of her mother, it is necessary to make a fuss, spend money and time. Yes, relatives know how to put a pig under the door. She stretched under her nose, even after death. The prospect of sharing did not please either. Communication with brother and sister generally irritated. Paul covered himself with a child, Doris with the lack of a place to live. The first was going ahead, the second was whining like a mosquito itching for breath. Ashley caught herself thinking that she wouldn't mind doing her brother and sister a favor if they were busy solving their immediate problems, here and now, instead of gnawing away at their inheritance. Lucy and John had gone to daycare, and Claire had just returned from her night cook shift. For weeks now, the woman had been plagued by a vague premonition. She had been thinking long and hard, deciding to calculate something in her mind, weighing it, but Lucy hadn't mentioned anything. The woman took a nap for a few hours, thought it over once more, and went to her neighbor's house. "Wendy, I want to write a will," she blurted out, sitting down in front of her. "God be with you, Claire." Aunt Wendy waved her hands. "Are you going to die?" "I have a hunch." Claire frowned. "I don't know. I feel like I should do it now." When Aunt Wendy stopped oohing and aing over her neighbor's statement, she clarified. "It took me a long time to get ready, but I think I'm doing the right thing." "Well, it means that you have to call a notary if you're going to do it." Wendy thought. "It's impossible to do the procedure without one," Claire confirmed. The women called the notary's office and made an appointment. The notary said that 2 witnesses would be needed. "Don't tell Lucy, please." Before leaving, Claire asked her neighbor. "So I thought Lucy would be the second." She shook her hands. Claire shook her head. No, we can't have her. Wendy thought for a moment. I've got a son coming over in those days. Maybe him? Claire nodded, said goodbye to her neighbor, and went home with a slightly relieved heart. The day before, she had spent a long time composing something else. She had written a lot of pages in an email for her youngest daughter. She scribbled again, then struggled to create an email account for herself with the help of Lucy and slowly retyped the text onto the screen. It had been a week since she'd sent it, but the inbox was just as sad and empty. Lucy had said that sooner or later her daughter would reply, something, a single word. Claire tried to believe. She generally tried to notice more good things around her. It became an acute daily necessity, on the way to rid herself of the colossal guilt and resentment she felt toward herself, her children, and life, and sometimes Claire felt she was succeeding. In the flight of a swift, in the glint of a puddle in the sun, in the warmth of a mug of fragrant tea passed from hand to hand, she gathered the grains of her medicine, and there was someone nearby who always supported and protected the fragile, recovering soul. Ashley drew on all her connections and hired the best lawyer available to challenge her mother's will as quickly as possible. It took several months, but the girl got her way. The judge confirmed that as direct heirs of the first turn, the native children of the deceased, the three of them, Ashley, Paul, and Doris, have legal rights to receive all the property of the mother. However, the second part of the plan could not be realized. The inheritance was awarded equally to each. Nothing. Ashley rubbed her hands together as she walked out of court. We'll use our own methods here. The main thing is that the sneaky orphan was left with nothing. That's what the bossy travel agency boss used to do when legal methods were exhausted. A couple of conversations, hit the right pain points, scare her, gather dirt. What difference does it make how she gets what she wants? Paul and Doris did not attend the trial. The former cited service, the latter the cost of travel. Ashley alone represented the three, though the interest was more likely to be all hers. The relatives were notified of the entry into the inheritance by registered letters from the lawyer. The girl pondered the course of action. How easier to force the fools, brother and sister, to sell the mother's property as soon as possible so as to hide from them a part of the income from the transaction. Ashley's plans were Napoleonic. She had long yearned to open a second branch of the agency, to exchange her one-room apartment for a two-room apartment closer to the center, and what to say to go to another country. The unfair division of money, not the welfare of relatives. Ashley did not care. What was to say about a strange girl with a strange child? Neither Lucy nor Aunt Wendy were present at the trial. The older woman and the young mother had no way of traveling to the capital, even though they knew what was going on. Lucy was taken aback when she learned that Claire had left her all her possessions. The girl was very confused. She had experienced 2 shocks in 1 month. First from Claire's death, then from her will. The woman had passed away in her sleep. She had suffered a heart attack. Lucy found her on her bed when she returned from work. It was 2 months after the will had been written. Claire had a feeling, and she wasn't wrong, unfortunately. So where is that abstract? Doris muttered irritably to herself, picking at the balls of her laptop. She had been given a study assignment the day before, and she remembered that she had prepared a big report on a similar topic at school. Doris decided to find it, print it out, and turn it in again, so that she wouldn't have to spend time collecting and processing the material again. Ashley had contested the will, and now the 3 of them owned the house, the land, and the garage. Doris was tempted to look for a cozy apartment in the suburbs. She was already dreaming of moving there. What kind of repairs she would make, what kind of sofa she would buy. All the farthest school folders on her laptop had been dug through, and the system search had failed to find anything. Doris was already nervous, imagining a sleepless night of preparing the essay, but her memory obligingly told her that she had sent the work to the teacher's mailbox in the 10th grade. She had to remember the password to the mailbox she hadn't used for a long time. She managed to log into the account after a long manipulation and began to scroll through her inbox with interest. Mostly there were advertising offers, letters from some depressing scammers, archival photos with classmates. Stop! What is this? Suddenly a letter from an unfamiliar address caught Doris' eye. It was strikingly different from everything else that had accumulated in her email box for so many years, and the letter was not so old. It had been sent a little less than 8 months ago. My eyes ran along the lines indifferently at first, but with each word I read, interest, anxiety, embarrassment, realization, and shame grew like a snowball. Hello, my daughter. How are you? I don't know if you will read my letter or not, but I hope you will. I want to apologize for everything from beginning to end, for the upbringing you disagreed with, for my desire to mold you into a copy of myself and condemn you to the same torment, for not paying attention to your inner world, and for the chasm that separated us that evening at the courtyard, turning into years of silence and coldness. I hope you'll forgive me. I realized my mistakes only many years later, but I don't blame any of you three. You grew up to be what you grew up to be, and I'm still secretly proud of all of you, but we made so many mistakes. Resentments, misunderstandings, harshness, and rudeness have divided us all as if we were strangers. How many of your happy moments I missed and did not see, for which now I blame myself terribly. I would never have dared to write to you, my daughter, if I hadn't had help. I met a girl who opened my eyes and showed me what I had been depriving myself of all the years of your childhood. I finally have the strength to admit it. I realize I'm asking the impossible, but let's try to be just a little closer, like siblings? I hope with all my heart for a speedy answer. Your mother, Claire. Doris finished reading the letter, her lips jumping, her shoulders shaking. She leaned back in her chair and burst into tears. Those pure, sincere words of her mother burned all the years of resentment out of Doris's soul. That night she didn't sleep. She forgot about the essay, about her studies, about the fact that she had to go to the next day's classes. Doris sat on the floor of the room against the wall until morning, hugging a small plush toy that she had brought from home many years ago, given by her mother on September 1. The toy had been gathering dust under the couch in a bag for years, but today Doris had found it, blown the trash away, cleaned it, and coddled it like a kitten. At dawn, the plush was wet with tears, her eyes swollen, her face flushed. As soon as the clock struck 8, Doris realized it was time, or rather, it was already possible. She frantically flipped through the phone book, looking for Aunt Wendy's number. Finding it, the girl called the older woman, apologized repeatedly and with difficulty, but got Lucy's phone number from her. Fingers trembling, Doris exhaled, hastily wiped a tear from her cheek with the palm of her hand, and dialed the right numbers. Hello, Lucy. You don't know me, but we need to talk. My name is Doris. I'm Claire's youngest daughter, and I want to give you my share of the inheritance.